Hello, friends and residency candidates, and welcome to today's success story interview, where I have the pleasure of speaking with matched applicant Dustin. So hello and welcome.
Good morning, everybody.
Can you tell us a little bit about your match, where you got into and what specialty?
Yeah, so I matched at Texas Tech University in El Paso. It was my number one choice, and I applied to psychiatry.
Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, so I got my number one pick and my preferred specialty. So I'm super excited to be going to Texas.
That's wonderful. And have you ever lived in Texas or visited, I guess?
I played in a volleyball tournament in Dallas one time, and then my wife and I spent our honeymoon in San Antonio, but never lived there. So we're excited to go there.
Wonderful. And so do you have a family that you're taking with you?
Yes, yeah, we have two little children, a little boy who he'll be a year in a few weeks, and then a little girl who just turned 5. So four of us will be headed there.
Amazing. And so did you have a family when you were going through medical school?
I did actually, yeah. So I married my high school sweetheart, which is kind of fun. And so we
Nice.
did all the undergrad and everything together. And then we had our little girl 4 months before we moved to Grenada to St. George's University. So she kind of grew up on the island for a few years. And then we had our little boy during third year.
And how did that play into your medical education?
It was honestly everything. It gave me more drive to do better, to improve myself as a student, to improve myself as an applicant. I talked about it over and over in interviews, just talking about how, the family aspect was so important to me, wanting that in the residency program, especially, and then also just needing to be home on time, or not, incorporating that into family life is probably one of the best things that's ever happened to me in med school. I was a little nervous going into medical school with a
Yeah,
family, but it worked out for me, and I highly recommend it to those who are thinking about it. Whatever situation you're in, whether you have a family or not, there's always ways to make it work.
and how did programs respond to your input about family importance and being present for that aspect of your life?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I think that was one of the bigger talking points, because in my application I highlighted that family was important to me, and that people were so important to me, and I wanted to have that familial relationship in the program that I'm training, and be able to still be a father and husband at home. They really loved that that was one of my priorities. They loved that, I don't consider myself the smartest kid on the block, and I've had to do things upside down, backwards to get to this point, and just helping them understand, the work that I put forth to get to the point where I was, and still try and be a good family a good family guy and give my family time was really important.
And was that something that you discussed in your personal statement, for example?
Yeah, I did mention it in my personal statement. So another part of my family, I have a twin brother, so I brought that in. That was a family aspect that I talked about, and talking about, kind of my life being a twin, and how that's kind of shaped me. And then I led into also talking about being a father, and kind of how being a father translated into me being a good physician to others. And that's not to say that you have to be a father to be a good physician, but I've learned lots of really great lessons along the way. And so, yeah, it was a part that I talked about in my application pretty openly.
Certainly. And so how has being a twin affected your journey and your experiences?
Yeah, apart from people not being able to tell us apart because we're identical,
There you go.
I it that actually was a big part of it, kind of figuring out my identity, because we were so similar. We had a lot of the same interests, but we were different people. And from a very young age, being aware of that, and figuring out what my own path was, and figuring out how other people felt about themselves being individuals and how I could build them up or learn from them. Um, Being a twin really kind of helped me create that mental and physical awareness of others and what they are and who they are, and whether that be my next door neighbor or my patients. But it's played a huge role in making me who I am.
Yeah. So what led you to psychiatry?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Before medical school, I was like, I'm doing pediatrics. I love kiddos, and I wanted to do pediatrics. But then in my third year, I really fell in love with psychiatry, and there was just something about the work, the people that I was with. I just knew that that was my tribe, and that was really what I enjoyed. I love being with the kiddos, but I think that psychiatry really was the thing that um, I wanted in my life. Whenever I would go into a patient's room, I was interested in figuring out what the problem was or helping them heal, but I also really wanted to know what was going on or had gone on in the background, those psychosocial factors and whatever had brought them to this point, because it all is so interconnected. I had opportunities before medical school to work in units with psychiatric patients. And I always felt very connected to them, even if, they were suffering from severe schizophrenia or severe, anxiety or different things that they'd had throughout their life, whether they were born with it or whether it had come on from, drug abuse. But I really felt this draw to them to help them feel as normal as they can, because a lot of times they can feel so trapped with those ailments that they suffer from. So I love the mind. I love learning more about the mind, and I love seeing, like I mentioned, what things in people's backgrounds bring them to where they are, and how it is connected with the physical and mental well-being of all these people. So I found my tribe, and I put my foot down, and that's where I decided. So I kept an open mind in medical school, and I'm glad I did.
Wonderful. Were you able to do things and tailor your application to be a strong fit for psychiatry?
Yeah, so it was like many people, I did as much as I could during the pandemic. I had been doing rotations, or actually, my rotations had been postponed a few months because of the pandemic, and then scheduling, rotations was difficult. But um, I did do my best to get the rotations that I could, so that I could get that, inpatient experience, even the outpatient experience, so that I could be able to talk the talk, and walk the walk, and be able to explain what I had done in my interviews and what I loved about it and the things I look forward to in the future. So, that goes for, trying to get letters of recommendation and everything as well. But I wasn't able to do as many outside extracurricular things just because things were limited at the time. But I felt very fortunate to be able to get the rotations and the electives I needed for psychiatry.
Perfect. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you were able to obtain the letters of recommendation, what the process was like for you when you were actually requesting them?
Yeah. Um, I know it's different for everybody. I approached because at the time I knew that psychiatry is what I wanted to do. So I approached my attending near the beginning of the rotation and just said, "Hey, Dr. So-and-so, just so you know, I am applying to psychiatry. I'm, passionate about the field. I'm so excited to do this rotation with you. I would feel honored at the end of the rotation if you would feel comfortable writing me a letter of recommendation. I'd feel honored to have that recommendation from you. I'll do my best. I'll work hard, but I'd like to know what you'd want me to do throughout the rotation to be able
Wow.
to be worthy of that letter." And so I set the expectation from the beginning that, hey, psych is what I'm applying to, and I would love to show you that I'm here to work, and I want to do what you want me to do to feel worthy of that letter. And I think that really kind of helped because, instead of just the last day of the rotation saying, "Hey, I'd love a letter. I'm going to apply to psych. Can you write me a letter?" They knew from the get-go that I was serious. They knew that they could tell me, "Hey, Dustin, you go do this," or I'd like you to read up on this topic. And I was willing to, because I was passionate and really wanted to obtain that letter. And at the end of the rotation, they sometimes they needed a reminder, sometimes they didn't, but they were always very willing to write me a letter. And even some of, I didn't see those letters, but some of the programs that I interviewed with, they were very happy with the letters and said, hey, your letter was the reason that we vetted you or put you through the vetting process. We were very impressed with the letter. And so hopefully good things came out of it.
Yeah, sounds like it. What sort of input did they give you after that initial conversation? Did
Yeah.
they say, yeah, what was their response to that?
It depended. So one of the psychiatric physicians, he had a nurse practitioner that I worked very closely with too. They just said, when you go into training, make sure you just continue to be yourself. Patients will, patients will appreciate that authenticity. And then with your colleagues as well, just be yourself and remember to take care of yourself before anything else, because you ultimately need to be that example of taking care of your mental health, taking care of your physical health, so that you can be able to help others along the way. But as far as feedback from the rotation, a lot of the physicians were very happy that I was able to, or that I was willing to just step up to the plate and say, yep, yeah, of course I can do that. Yes, I'd love to do that. And just kind of maintain the attitude of gratitude through the whole time while working as hard as I can. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that, some of I'm sure they said other things, but it's been a minute.
Certainly. Yeah. So what's something that you are very proud of getting through or overcoming throughout this whole medical school and residency application process?
Yeah. So it's funny because even though I applied to medical school and ended up going the IMG route, I never honestly thought I had the capacity to get through medical school. I just said, hey, I'm just going to keep jumping on those lily pads until one sinks, and I can say, hey, I did my best. Luckily, none of the lily pads sunk, but I think one of the biggest accomplishments I had was getting past step one. I know that might be a cliche, but for me, it was kind of a point in time that I proved to myself, oh, hey, you did it. Like, you could get past that first gnarly monster of a board exam that nobody loves. And once I got past that, I had this, almost increased boost of confidence saying, hey, I think I do belong here. Imposter syndrome is still at an all-time high, but it was a really, really cool turning point for me to get past it. And I'm an open book, I'll be honest and say, hey, I didn't, kill the exam by any means, but I got past it, and it was a very proud moment for me.
Yeah. So what helped you mentally, even before going to med school, to even take that leap and have at least enough confidence in yourself to apply and to start?
That's a great question. I think I've done a lot of introspection thinking about that. Like, what was it that allowed me to take that leap of faith or to jump into this crazy world of medicine? And there's a few experiences in my life where, I've had the opportunity to live out of the country and third world developed countries and kind of see the blessings that we have in the United States. And I've just tried to not take what I have for granted and just kind of take opportunities as they come for me or come to me. And, try to fail forward the best I can and figure it out along the way. So I'd say that was a really big part. Just kind of seeing that outside of the bubble I had grown up in, and realizing, hey, those risks that we can take really aren't huge risks if you do it calculated and you do it right and you just work your hardest. And that's not to say that everybody who goes through medical school will be successful, but for me, it was worth the risk. And I knew that possibility of not getting through was there. But also I had past work experience just in random fields that I think that weren't even related to medicine, that kind of gave me that confidence as well to be like, well, hey, I've done this. At one time I was a recruiter for a software development team. I knew nothing about software development, but I learned how to speak the lingo the best I could to bring developers to their company. I used to work on a landscaping company, and I would lay sod on large football fields and residential homes, and just things that I had experienced and taken with me in the past had built up, and allowed me to say, hey, you've tried other things in your life. Let's go ahead and try this out too, and see how it pans out.
Was there ever a point where you felt like turning back or giving up?
Every day.
Yeah,
Every
there you
day.
go.
To be totally honest, I'm a very optimistic person. I tend to think I'm an optimistic person, at least. But medical school is hard. It's a very hard thing. And I would just take it step by step and try and do my best and just focus on what was in front of me at the present time. But there were times that you can ask my wife. She knows that I would come home just like, man, what am I doing? Or what is going to happen tomorrow? Am I even going to get past this thing or this? But like I mentioned, if you just keep pushing forward and do your best, it's likely going to work out. And if especially having people around you that can support you is huge. Even just somebody to talk to and just open up to about your struggles. Be as transparent as you can. This might be a little tangent, but I think through medical school, we're all, uh, we all have these high expectations and high goals for ourselves. And sometimes it's hard to be transparent with those who are around us because they might see us as less or as failures. But it's so important to be transparent, because the more you reach out, the more help you'll get. And then the more you can serve others around you who are going through medical school or going through other hard things. So yes, there were multiple times that I thought about giving up or turning back, but just like I said, I kept jumping on those lily pads and until they sunk, and none of them sunk.
Yeah, like you said, if you fall forward, at least you're that much closer to your goal, and just gotta
Exactly.
get back up and keep going.
Exactly.
What was something that you think helped land you your number one position versus any other program on your list?
There's a couple things. First, I kind of had mentioned that I had lived out of the country for a minute. For the church I go to, I was able to go to a church mission in Guatemala, and I learned Spanish while I was there. I even in medical school, for my medical school applications, I had a strong theme for being an advocate for the Latino population and bridging the gap that sometimes exists in medical care. And that's always been a theme for me throughout medical school, through before medical school, and even now. El Paso has a very strong Spanish-speaking population. It's right there on the U.S.-Mexico border. And I'm very excited to be working with those people to bridge that gap and to be able to talk in their language and communicate with them in a way that kind of brings the humanism into medicine, rather than a translating TV screen, which are great and they're fantastic. I love that technology, but to really be an advocate for those people, and more importantly, I think there's an even greater need for mental health with that population. And I'll work with other populations as well, but that's one of the bigger things. Another thing I think was just really showing my interest and my passion for mental health, and for my being very open about how excited I was about psychiatry. And through the interview too, when I got the interview, I was very excited because it's a well-known institution and a great program. And I let them know multiple times how grateful I was for the interview and how much I would love to work with their team in the future if I was chosen. But then, just speaking with the faculty members, speaking with the residents in the meet and greet and during the interview, was phenomenal, and I just felt right at home. But yeah, I think being able to speak Spanish, really relaying my want to be in that program. And then funny enough, back to the family, just kind of talking about that family aspect and how I would love to be in a program that kind of harnesses that environment. Those are some of the things that I can think of right now.
Yeah. Did you follow up with them after your interview as well?
I did. One of the faculty members, she gave me the tip. She said, hey, um, I think that if you're interested in our program, you should follow up with those who you interviewed with today and really let us know. So um, I followed up with a thank you email like I did for all of my interviews, just to expressing my gratitude for their time and choosing me as a possible candidate. And then I followed up. It was about a month or two later with a letter of interest, just letting them know, hey, I absolutely loved my interview. You have all these aspects of the location that I'd want to be in. I'd love to raise my family there, and I'd love to train there and get great training. For them, I did mention in my email that they were at the top of my list. I did mention that. Other programs I had ranked highly, I didn't want to put, hey, to everybody, you're at the top of my list, because I thought that might be a little dishonest, but I did mention that they were highly ranked on my list. That's the language that I used. But yeah, so I did follow up in, I guess, two ways: a thank you letter and then a letter of intent.
Is there anything that you would have done differently, whether in medical school or throughout the residency application process, now that you've gone through it and have a little bit of hindsight?
I'm sure there's lots of things that I could have done, I could have done differently. Like I mentioned, I feel like I've just been learning this all along the way. I'm the first person in my family on both sides to even go through graduate school, and one of few in my family to even get a bachelor's degree. So I've kind of just been winging it the best I can. I think I would have reached out to friends and colleagues sooner in medical school, just about things that they were doing that they were feeling success in with their studies, resources that they found helpful, and really just kind of understanding how to improve myself as a student and how to be a better learner. I reached out to podcasts and different things like that, which were good, but I think one of the bigger things, just to surround yourself from the get-go with people who you're studying with, or that you see on a daily basis, is huge. And I wish I would have done that sooner. And I think it could have helped me with a lot of struggles.
Yeah. You mentioned helping bridge gaps in healthcare, especially for the Latino community. What actions or what do you expect to be able to do to help systemically address those issues, whether that's in residency or beyond?
Yeah, I really would love to. So I've never imagined myself as a researcher, but I would not mind doing some type of research in the community to kind of help like community awareness that there are disparities in mental health with Latino populations and other populations and groups that aren't as advantaged as many people. And so I think that being an advocate for them, whether it be on paper or physically in the community, is one thing that I'd love to do. And then I think just when you're in the hospital or the clinic or wherever, I would love to be able to train others who I'm around to not just discount somebody from certain treatments or somebody from special care or different things just because of where they're from. I think a lot of times our minds immediately go, oh, they have this type of insurance, or oh, they have no insurance, or oh, they have this past history. And we tend to have that unconscious bias that we shouldn't exist but does. but I think just helping people eliminate or better that bias the best I can would be amazing. And being there on the border too, I hope that there will be opportunities for me to work with families and people who are going through incredible stressors in their life or mental ailments to really just kind of help improve their life as a whole and help them teach their community members how to manage their stressors, their depression, and how to find help. I think that's one of the biggest things that, there's such a stigma anyway, and well, it's getting better in mental health, but to eliminate that stigma and then to help those communities know where to go to receive help.
Regarding psychiatry itself, what is something that you love about the field, and what's something that you're hoping or think could be improved or changed about it?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think some of the best things I've seen in psychiatry are, a lot of people go into a psychiatric rotation and are just excited to be out of the psychiatric rotation, but there's so much in psychiatry with new procedures with interventional psychiatry that's really exciting. There's lots of fellowships you can pursue that might not even seem psych related, like sleep medicine or forensics, or different things that are really, really exciting. And there's a lot of really, really new research and funding going into psychiatry for new treatments, whether they be pharmacological or therapy related. You may have seen, or others may have seen, there's a lot of really new research with PTSD medications or hallucinogens, which you would never think. But I think that you'll see more and more of things that seemed like taboo in the past be brought to the front lines, controlled to help people, which might have not been thought of being used in the past. And so, but things that I think could be improved in psychiatry. My experience is still so limited, but I think, as far as on a training level, I've thought about this a little bit, is just finding a way to help pre-medical students and medical students really understand what psychiatry has to offer. Because I think a lot of people don't know what psychiatry is about. They just think, oh my goodness, I'm going to be taking care of sad people all day. I can't deal with that. Which sure, that might be part of the job description, but there's so much more. And it offers so many things within the field and then within life itself. I have yet to come across a psychiatrist that is not happy with their life balance, their work-life balance. I'm sure they exist, but the ones I've been able to be fortunate enough to work with really, really have a lot of pride in the work that they do, and then the ability to do things outside of their life, whether it be with their family or whether it be other business ventures. There just tends to be a more focused approach on the individual's mental health as an employee too, which is always helpful.
Gotta walk the walk to talk the talk, right?
Exactly.
Perfect. What is some final advice that you would give applicants who are getting ready or starting the current application cycle?
Yeah. So I think, you've already gotten this far. Medical school is incredibly stressful and can be, one of the hardest things you've ever done. But going into application season, just kind of, realize that you've gotten this far, take a big breath. And I think the biggest piece of advice I would leave is just to be yourself. I think, like I mentioned, programs really do appreciate that authenticity. They want to know if you're going to be somebody that they can clock in with and clock out with and be happy working with. Obviously, they want to see that you're a competent medical student and that you'll be a competent resident and hopefully physician in the future. But they ultimately want to see that you're going to be able to work with them and that you're going to be a good human being. This is just a small example. in resident meet and greets or in my interviews, if they asked me, something that was unique about myself, um, my family and friends all know that I love donuts. Like I could eat a whole box of donuts and not be ashamed about it. And I would say that in my interviews, I would say, I can shamelessly pound a dozen donuts, maybe even more. And they, it was a good icebreaker in the conversation, but they also, I think, saw like, oh, hey, he's actually trying to be himself, and they appreciated that. So it's a stressful time, but have as much fun with it as you can and just be yourself.
Fantastic. Well, this interview has been incredibly insightful and informative, and I appreciate hearing your open thoughts and feelings about everything that you've been through and expect to be going through in the upcoming years. So thank you for taking the time, and I hope that many people find this as valuable as I have.
Thank you so much, Zeph. I appreciate your time.